Okay, mute that one. All right. Believe it or not, we are live. It is November 27th. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. If you are a lucky person, you'll get a turkey meal. If not, you get a variation. I know all these veggie friends eat different things, and some people like a little roast, a piggy roast, and some people like different barbecue type things. And so I have a bunch of friends that like that tree dunking, which is the turkey, the chicken, and the duck all together deep fried, which is amazing. I'm sure Uryan eats that, maybe.
I think we're doing ham, but thanks.
Yeah, there you go. Some people eat ham. So, but before we get started with this amazing event today, we're going to ask our own John Sibley Butler for some Thanksgiving music.
Past are sprinkled with the blues. I got a few old dreams that I can't use. Pulled by my memory of things that used to be. And with a smile for the tears, and with a smile, some better years. Pulled by my memory of things that used to be.
All right.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Johnny.
You're
So,
welcome.
John, the year is accelerating. Christmas is coming, New Year is coming, new administration, new changes, all kinds of amazing things happening with high tech. And I know you're preparing for next year's disruptive 50 already. A lot of these companies are unicorns. It seems like everything keeps getting bigger and bigger out of Texas, and the amount of opportunity is just gigantic. What say you, Johnny?
Well, what I've been spending my time on, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I've been looking at what's going on in China. I've been looking at the academic research. There's a great book on kind of demography of China and what the new generation is doing and how the generation that took China from 1 billion from poverty to prosperity is now much like American kids. They're working hard, but they're not working as hard. Whereas their parents work to have a house, they're more like our kids. They're doing TikTok and that kind of stuff. And so the big question becomes very, very interesting. How how can how can we do? Well, let me get rid of this. How can we do what we need to do in the future? So I've been paying a lot of things to China, and also been paying a lot of what's going on. I think after the holidays and with the election, I think it's very, very interesting. But I think in terms of the economy, I don't think much would change. Just a little bit would change. I don't think that the president can do everything that he wants to do. But for me, and my deal is, what does it have to do on startups? And I think they are going to continue to blossom. I think that a lot of stuff will happen in America. I think that ideas will be presented that will basically provide new jobs and opportunity in the era of AI. And I also think our biggest problem in the future in Texas will be electricity. As you know, I've been working hard trying to get with our economic development people to get them to understand that we have done a great job inviting companies to Texas. But the question is, where will they plug up in the future? So I think if
Mm-hmm.
you ask me of all the problems that we have in economic development, it's going to relate to electricity. A lot of people are predicting that we have a slowdown in the economy. I'm not sure that that's true. And we got to understand that in America, the more enterprises we have, the better off the country is. And I think if we keep that in focus, then we do a lot. Other than that, it looks like we had as a Vietnam veteran, we had some peace going on around the world to stop people from throwing rockets at each other, and that was a good sign by the president. And because that can be something bad going forward for our economy. And Ukraine is still there. So Andreas, in the midst of it all, I'm gonna go back to my distinguished colleague, Llewellyn King. We're still the best there is in the world. With all of our problems, people want to still want to come here. With everything, no matter what Llewellyn says bad about Texas, they still want to come to Texas. No matter what Llewellyn
Well,
says good about
they better make
America, they
sure
still
that
want to
there's
come to
enough
America.
electricity and water. Hot air is not sufficient.
Okay, thank you.
Llewellyn, what say you?
I think it's a very disturbed time. Well, we're going to have a tumultuous economic meltdown if the president-elect has his way with 25% tariffs to our good friends in Mexico and our great friends in Canada. It's going to roil the markets globally. It's going to put up costs here. It's going to destroy the automobile industry. Now, what I hear is, of course, here it says it won't really happen. But it's rather disturbing to have an elected president who says things that he's going to do if they're not going to happen. That is not a good basis on which to start a presidency, when to believe him, when not to believe him. I think he will endeavor on day one to fulfill his promise, but I think he'll run into technical governmental issues that he doesn't have the full authority to introduce brutal tariffs, and they're directed almost absolutely against the free trade agreement he signed when he was president last. So this is a very bad beginning and very disturbing for the global economy, and it could be shattering for our economy, disastrous for the economy in Mexico, which means more migrants, not fewer, will try to get to the US. And the southern border isn't the only way to get into the US. Prosperous people will fly in as tourists, etc. Those with less opportunity might try to get here by boat, but there will continue to be people. If we throw people out of work in Mexico and people out of work here, the people in Mexico will still come here because they think it's a really serious situation. And I think this sort of happy talk Johnny doesn't deal with the realities of a president-elect whose first action he would like to be would be to roil the world and to cause devastating impacts in North America. So it's a very bad situation. I don't think that he is cognizant of the impact of tariffs or how they work or how he is violating agreements that he himself signed when he was president last. So a lot of reconsideration. One hopes that people in his administration, and particularly the people who have helped him get there with their financial support, will get him on one side and say, Mr. President, you can't do that. It will be devastating. However, even if that happens, even if it doesn't, if there is no tariff, if he doesn't pull the rug out from under North America at on his confirmation day or shortly afterwards, it is a bad beginning to declare that you're going to do something which is either illegal or which you cannot pull off, or which will be devastating if you do pull it off. So I'm much less sanguine than you are, Johnny.
So this is why we have Llewellyn in the show. He's very salty at times. So so as I wanted to remind you all, I was reading the stats for tomorrow, and I think today and the day after. 80 million Americans are traveling for Thanksgiving. I don't know how many of those are flying. I think American Airlines said that 8 million people were flying in their airline, but I suspect that the bulk of those are driving using our beautiful roads and going probably as far as California and as far as New York from Texas. Clearly, transportation is one of the biggest challenges on the growth, Johnny. I know the power is a big enabler of all that, but without really getting our handle on the future of the roads and transportation, it's really going to be a challenge to figure out how we go from 350 million people to 400 million people or whatever it's going to be. Most of them probably Texas. so so the question becomes, what's going on? What's going on in Central Texas with autonomous vehicles, with connected vehicles, with mass transit, with trains, with rails, with all kinds of things. And so I think we have a great guest to give us a glimpse of some of the things that are happening and basically dive into some of the programs that are being worked on and also get a better understanding from the inside of the cockpit on what's going on. So I'm happy to say that we have Uryan Nelson with us today, and Uryan is a multitasker. He works with several agencies. He's the Planning and Regional Services Division Director and the KTMPO Director at Central Texas Council of Governments. And he can probably spend all kinds of time describing to us what he does and all these agencies, how do they come together. CTCOG, or the Central Texas Council of Governments, helps local communities work cooperatively to improve the conditions and well-being of Central Texans, covering 7 counties with 32 cities in the Temple, Killeen, Fort Cavazos area in the region, and with a population of roughly, probably inching into a million folks over the next few years. So welcome, Uryan.
Thank you. Thanks y'all for having me, and thanks for inviting me. And I'm happy to be here the day before Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. I'm curious if you could help our audience catch up with all these terminologies and all these, infrastructure councils and government groups coming together. Can you explain to us actually the organizations you work for and the scope of that?
Well, I can try, and I've been trying to explain to my mother for at least 10 years what I do, and I still haven't been able to do that or explain to myself. But the Council of Governments, there are 24 regional planning commissions in the state, and we were created by Texas Government Code back in the 70s. So we've been around, and the whole objective of our organization and those like us is to define what the regional priorities are and work together as regions to bring solutions and fill gaps where there may be a need. The other entity that you referenced is the Killeen-Temple MPO. I saw you guys had Michael Morris from North Central Texas on a while back, and Nareev, and they're both with MPOs. We're just a smaller version of those. We only cover Bell County and a little bit of Coryell and Lampasas County, but it's the same thing. We get together and discuss and determine regional transportation priorities specifically. And then, of course, I also am the director for the Development District of Central Texas, which is housed here at the COG. And we, as a 7-county region, kind of set forward our comprehensive economic development strategy and try to move that forward to ensure that we're not just sitting in the back watching everything happen around us. So we stay in front of it as it comes. I hope that helped.
Yeah, absolutely. Johnny? You're muted.
First of all, I'm a little disturbed that you don't understand that you are in North Austin. So I'm a little disturbed about that. This temple, this temple, Killeen. I say that because Andreas and I was in Killeen, and the town, and the guy said, well, we just consider ourselves North Austin now. And that's the first time I saw Andreas kind of raise his head and go like that. You do? And of course, that comment tells us about what's happening in Central Texas. And I'll just make some comments first. It tells us that there's a blending, like it was in the Northeast. There's a blending of cities. And with the blending of cities, there's a lot of more transportation problems we've got going on. So my first question to you is this. when you deal with the Killeen-Temple corridor, as we'll call it, what's driving the population? Is it San Antonio? I know it's Austin. Is it Killeen? Is it Temple? Do we see the same amount of growth in Temple proportionally that we see in Austin? I have good friends, Uryan, who sold their house in Austin and moved from Austin to to Waco because they say it's much faster to drive from Austin to Waco than it is from Austin to South Austin. And so and went up there and bought homes. So how do you see what's driving all of this growth in Central Texas?
Well,
Besides business enterprises and where people are.
well, and it's funny that you reference those folks buying a house in Waco. For the first 4 years that I worked here in Belton, I lived in Leander, which is, just north of Austin. And prior to working here, I would drive from Leander to Austin every day, which was 15 miles. And it would take me twice as long to get back and forth to work there as it does here, which is 45 miles. But what I would say is driving a lot of the growth for this region is we are dead smack in the center of that Texas Triangle mega region between Dallas, Houston, San Antonio. And that's where, as those areas grow, they have to grow toward the middle, and then they'll start expanding back out.
That it's just run by PR people.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Llewellyn, were you saying something?
No, that's all right. Sorry. I beg your pardon. I thought I was muted. I was trying to deal with something else. Forgive me.
Okay.
I'm not good with computers.
You are a computer. You're a little
Andres.
computer yourself.
No. Anyway, should I ask a question?
Yeah.
I have a question, and that is, we are stuck with old modes of transportation, roads, sometimes trains, possibly buses, and cars. Is there going to be any breakthrough? We saw something which we never expected, and that is some easing in city congestion because people got on scooters. We thought they would get on segways. They didn't, but they sure got on scooters. And there are an awful lot of people who actually do. I don't know what the numbers are, but just by looking at them in any particular city, you see people whizzing around on scooters who would otherwise, one assumes, be driving. But public transportation in the big cities, ever since COVID, has fallen off in demand. Because not so many people go to work, and despite the so-called RTO, return to office, people don't want to RTO, and it's going to be a tough call. But looking to the future, is there any way around this? We have, believe it or not, very good train service in America, but it only runs from Boston to Washington, and it's really first rate. I ride it all the time. I've also ridden trains all over Europe and in Africa, and I think it's a very competitive service that Amtrak has on that line, which is electrified and where they own the track. But that's not going to be a solution anywhere else. And of course, the basic track was laid down before we had today's congestion. You couldn't put in a surface railroad anymore because you'd have to knock down so many buildings. It's just not feasible. Buses jam up when the traffic, and what happens, or in my observation, is that when small communities say they're going to put in buses, they put in buses that run infrequently, which sort of invalidates their usefulness. Places where buses are very effective, particularly in the United Kingdom, they're like, as my wife says, a conveyor belt. You miss one, you get on the next one. You don't have to have. So that doesn't seem to be working very well. And everybody goes back to their cars. But for commuting, that has its limits. New York City is once again trying a community charge to charge people who bring their cars into downtown, into Manhattan, parts of Brooklyn, and I imagine parts of Long Island. What do you see, Uryan, as the future of transportation? Is it underground? Is it some version of Elon Musk's boring machine?
So,
How do we get out of the box and find the new way to move people?
I think we could probably talk for the next 75, 85 hours straight.
Well, I've only got 60.
But you know, to speak to some of those concerns you have, and I think I talked about this just briefly right before we started. You know, I think we're in a place where, and I'm not saying drive the nails in the coffin, but until some significant change is made, we're going to be stuck in a reaction mode. You know, we can't keep up with all of the demand, and we can barely maintain everything that we have right now. So to find additional funds to expand highway networks, you know, we're trying to do that, as well as other initiatives. It's hard to find because your money's already going to a system that is congested beyond all means. That being said, you know, here in the Temple Killeen area, we work with our transit provider. I'm not going to speak for them, but just one of their initiatives, you know, is they went from the fixed route bus service to a micro transit service. They've transitioned to that. Now, what that does, that takes those big buses off the road, gets people moved around a little faster, but it adds to the total vehicle count on the roadway. So, you know, you fix part and it's just you have to work back and forth to see how those mechanisms really come together and where you can make adjustments for the scooters and things. Those really, for our region, the way our cities are laid out, they don't provide the benefit that you would see in Austin, where everything is, you know, the way Austin's developed downtown. It's very easy to use those scooters. The way the city of Belton, Temple, Killeen, not as easy to use the scooters. And then the other thing that we are looking at, and I think you brought it up, was rail. I mean, we have Fort Cavazos here. There are a lot of people. We have a lot of military movement, you know, and we've been trying to work with entities to come in, private entities, to do a public-private partnership to do some type of high-speed, elevated Hyperloop technology to move goods and people through our region. That would take the strain off of the local roadway, because those people would be using, you know, that elevated platform. And then eventually it would tie into that Fort Worth Laredo high-speed rail, hopefully. But, you know, those are conversations that we just have to continue to have. And we have to coordinate with TxDOT. We have to make sure all of our county judges, because the process, you know, it takes so long, you know, depending on turnover in elected officials, priorities can even change for the region. So, you know, we may spend however long working on moving a project forward. And if newly elected officials come in and say, I don't like that priority, well, then we have a priority shift and we have to deal with that too. But I think there's a lot to unpack with how do we keep up with the demand? How do we react to what we have, in addition to adding capacity and adding opportunity and transportation possibilities for you know, motorized and non-motorized transportation through our transportation network in our region that also complements and doesn't cause some devastating effect to the Austin region, the Waco region, the, you know, Bryan College Station. So we all have to kind of be working together to make this a comprehensive change so that the transportation network through the state can be solid and functional.
Johnny raised the question.
Sorry, let me ask one quick follow-up there, Llewellyn. So Uryan, it seems like the current go to fix the problem is toll roads. How are the toll roads performing? What do we know? I mean, we're building a toll road, I think, in 360. The toll road on 130 I use a lot. It is fabulous. The toll road on 45 I use quite a bit. It's fabulous. I know that there is HOV lanes in Mopac Is that the answer, short-term toll roads?
So to be honest with you, we don't, in our region, we don't have any toll roads.
Okay.
But, you know, we benefit from some what's called toll credits in the
Mhm.
funding because it's counted to pay for some of our transit operations and things like that. But we don't directly notice an impact from the toll roads in
Mhm.
our region.
Okay.
And to be honest, I don't know that that's a solution, because all that does is provides, by the time you get the toll road completed, you're playing catch up already. And then
Mhm.
people are paying to use that. And then in my mind, and this is me, but just a free thinking person behind this wall of computer safety, is, you know, toll roads to me kind of create um, uh, an equity equality concern, because people that need those, you know, they may not have the money for the toll road, so then they're faced to not use
Right.
the toll road. So that, to me, it's almost like, hey, if you have a little bit more, yeah, you can use this fancy road we just built. And then, not to speak ill of toll roads, but you know, if you're paying $18 to use 130 or 45, and then you end up sitting in traffic just like you would on 35, I don't think
Mhm.
that's a good taste either.
I think there's something that you see, and excuse me, Johnny, I'm sort of jumping out of space, out of time here. And that is that if you build more roads, you get more cars. In Virginia, they built toll roads, and now you can sit in a traffic jam and pay more for it. It's not been a huge, it hasn't changed. It's increased the amount of traffic, and people are living further out in the belief the toll road will get them in quickly. Around London, they built a thing called a beltway called the M25, and the day it was opened, cars were sucked out of garages. There was a traffic jam, and it's continued to this day. It has not really helped transportation around London. It has taken people off public transport because they think they can drive. And somewhat similar, there's a thing around Paris called the Rue Périphérique, which is a kind of beltway, and it's always jammed up. So beware, if you build roads, they will come, and they will come in their cars and jam them up.
And I think, Llewellyn, I think that's right. And it's not just the amount of cars that come, but the amount of time it takes to construct. In that time, population numbers will grow, people with vehicles will grow. You know, you're by the time some of these toll roads are, it's 20 years. And by that
Mhm.
time, the growth in the region already doesn't support that.
Yeah. Well, Uryan, by the way, I'm trying to figure out who named you Uryan. I don't know if you're from Southern Louisiana or Southern Mississippi or Southern Georgia. I can't figure it out. But let's add another equation element to this equation. I'm in Austin. I'm 3.5 hours from Dallas, or 4. I'm 2.5 or 3 from Houston. I'm 11 hours from El Paso. I am 11 or 13 hours from Texas Tech University. Now, one of the problems that we have, and let me just say this, one of the great things that has happened to Texas since Herb did Southwest Airlines, flying originally just in Texas, was Von Lane. Do you know Von Lane? That's a luxury bus that goes from Austin to Houston to Dallas. What does the mere distance do to your solutions? The fact that by the time I drive from Austin to El Paso, I could drive from Maine to, North Carolina. What does the mere distance do for that? I mean, you said by the time you build it, it is basically full again. How do you deal with distance?
You know, that's a rough one, you know, because that covers multiple regions, and that's where like I referenced earlier, I think we all have to be on the same page and working from the same document, which is the state's transportation plan, to ensure that we are not disrupting what they've got going on in El Paso and vice versa. that's, I think, how distance really plays a role. Now, for actual transportation, I think I believe that high speed, ultra high speed hyperloop technologies, could be very beneficial coming through those areas where there isn't a lot going on. You're just driving for 12, 13 hours. It could make travel and trips closer, but then when you get to the end of where you're going, how do you get around? Do you hop in another car, or do you have some mode of transportation already available to people to not add that additional strain onto your network?
Right. I mean, when I'm driving from New Orleans and I'm outside of Houston and it says El Paso, 630 miles. I mean, who would put a sign up like that?
Well, maybe they know that you're headed to El Paso.
Or San Antonio, 540 miles. And so when you look at that, for the regional stuff, do you guys interact and talk about that fast rail that could hook everybody together? And by the way, I think I'm saying this because of the business purposes. Southwest Airlines was done so that business people could interact with each other without flying right all the way to Dallas and switching planes, or New Orleans and switching planes, right? And so Herb said we're going to do Southwest. We had 2 planes, and we flew only in Texas. So from a business point of view, do you guys realize that as people move around, they're moving for business purposes, and how important that is to interact on a business side like Southwest did? So my question is, hey, when you guys interact with each other in your yearly meetings, do you say, hey, we need this rail from Houston to for business purposes?
So we have done that, and we did it with the study that we conducted in 2018 to 2020, the Fort Worth to Laredo high-speed rail study that we did. And it wasn't only for business purposes, it was for general purpose. It was for use of movement of freight, because if you do it strictly for the business purpose, then you're limiting. So you need to ensure that you have the ability not only to take that personal trip, but also to be able to move goods, because goods take up a big chunk of our transportation network as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a couple of questions?
Go ahead.
It seems to me that electricity, the issue raised by Johnny, is a political problem. It's not it's not really a resource problem. Texas has a lot of gas, can build a lot of gas turbines, has a lot of wind, and has a lot of sun. There should not be an electricity problem. However, when we get to water, this is not a political problem. It has political dimensions to it, but fundamentally it's a resource problem. And you can make more electricity, but it's very difficult to make more water. You can desalinate some, but it's very expensive and it has its own environmental consequences. So it would seem to me, looking in the future of Texas, the really troublesome thing is not electricity or transportation, all of which are subject to engineering solutions, can be engineered out, the problem, but water, which is a terrible problem. I come from Africa, and the part of Africa I come from, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Zambia, suffering the worst drought ever. They have, as a result that their hydro is ineffective. They have no electricity. They have no crops growing, so they've got starvation building. When you have no water, you are in a hard place. And Texas, cannot grow forever unless it can in some way think in terms of solving its long-term water problem. And it doesn't seem to be a quick, easy, smart solution on the horizon.
So you're right. And, in our region, we are constantly trying to tackle some of what we can to assist with the water crisis, but we can't just create water like you referenced. And we have new subdivisions popping up, which create capacity concerns for water. We have businesses that pop up, which create capacity issues. And then at the end of the day, we can have all these reservoirs and people can say, look at all the water you have in Lake Belton, look at Stillhouse Lake. look at there's enough water. What's the problem? But at the end of the day, when that's gone, then you just have a dry dust bed, if you will.
Well, that's right. And the Zambezi River, which feeds the largest water impoundment on earth, the Kariba Dam between Zambia and Zimbabwe, was regarded as immortal. It could never stop running. It was one of the great rivers of the world, except it's got no water in it. And the great water impoundment has no water to make electricity, not enough. Wildlife is dying, farmers are perishing. When the water stops, life is over, basically. You have to move, you have to go elsewhere.
So that is definitely, something we keep on our radar, and we are constantly working with is water in our area. I mean, even some of the plans, have shown that we'll have additional capacity over what we need, but if we continue to grow, we'll be at break even or a below capacity level. But even though that may be years out, we have to start acting now to determine where that water is going to come from, how it's going to get routed to us. And like anything, if you want to make it where it's something that is going to support you, it's going to be another one of those construction projects that's going to take years and years and years to move forward.
So, Uryan, I have a question. How do you guys understand for example, what you did? You moved from Leander farther away. Are people escaping urban areas and they're moving to the rural county? How do you track that? How do you manage that? How do you prepare for that?
So I really haven't tracked it, but it's one of those things I have my own thoughts on is, certain generations like to socialize a certain way, have a certain expectancy of what they want to do when they get home from work, when they're at work. And, with the opportunity now for a lot of people to work remote, especially in the private sector and the public sector for the time being, it adds comfort to those people being able to move away. I did it, specifically to be closer to work up here, but it affords those people who don't want to live in a congested area the ability to say, hey, let's move to Bell County. They have internet, which is another big thing that it is another big project in our area.
Sure.
Without internet, you can't have commerce.
Right.
You can't have those folks working from home that are paying the property taxes. So there are a lot of different aspects, but I think I've got siblings. One of my brothers likes to live by himself. The other one lives downtown Austin because that's his vibe. With the way everything is going with technology, and the ability to move between cities, even though you might have to sit there for a while, like you're on a horse and buggy, you can do that. You can choose where you want to live and how you want to do that, and still be happy with and feel successful about where you are with your own life.
Sure. How many, I wonder how many, Uryan, how many of the folks that you are in your community, for example, are they from New York, from California, or is it just people from Texas?
In our region?
Yeah.
I mean, in our region, we've seen a lot of growth. We've seen the investors come in and buy the properties from other states. I don't know exactly which states those are from, but our biggest impact is Fort Cavazos. And those folks from all over the world. And then they come here and they like it because we're great in Central Texas. And they retire here. And so we have a lot of the retired veterans that are here that choose to live here. That's what we really notice. Investors, they really went south a little bit, and then I think up to Waco, I think they got a little bit of us, but
Mm-hmm.
I think they were more interested in Magnolia and the big names of Austin and Waco. But they're coming here, and large businesses are coming here. You know, we have Meadow, we have HEB distribution centers here. We have some of those bigger.
What about Amazon? You have Amazon?
I don't think we have Amazon right now.
Okay.
Well, do you work with economic development when planning these things for your region?
Yeah, we have the development district that's housed here.
Right.
And basically, what
do they ever mention electricity? I'm just asking.
they do. They mention electricity and water, basically everything we've talked about on here. You know, the big push in our area now, because we have so much area. You know, we've got one of the largest in our region. We've got one of the largest, if not the largest, Bitcoin mining facilities.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in Rockdale, Texas. It's at the old Alcoa plant, and it's, if not, when I was serving as an interim development district director out there for them, they were the largest Bitcoin mining operation. And now we've seen an influx in this farmland that we have out here, with solar companies coming in to produce some of that electricity. But the one thing that, you know, we can capture the electricity, like I just referenced, with some of the solar, and we can work to try to catch up with the traffic. I think without some major big shift, funding wise and timing wise, we're still going to be playing catch up for a significant amount of time. But what we can't nail down is we can't create that water that Llewellyn was talking about.
Right.
And without water, you can't have rooftops, you can't have business. You know, we're doing good right now. We've got what we need, and we've got what we need to continue to move forward. But at some point, like with everything, you've walked to the edge, and you take another step, and you're done. So,
yeah.
I think what we have here is, and the whole state is struggling with this, is there are lots of people moving here, and there's also a cultural conflict. That is, I talk to people all the time who come from great places that have great transportation, right? I mean, they hardly ever touch their automobile during the day. And they come here and they have to learn to drive again, basically. They have to learn to drive again. I've had colleagues from New York to visit the University of Texas who never thought about driving to work, waking up and driving to work. So I think in addition to the physical stuff, you've got big culture conflicts going on in terms of how people perceive how people should move around. And so
Absolutely.
I think that's an unstructured problem that we have. Yeah.
So Ryan, one last question from me about data. How much data do you all collect in the COG, and how much of what you guys do is based on data? I assume that reports get created, and there's all kinds of data from TxDOT about driving and traffic and this and that, but it's everything you guys do significantly data driven.
a lot of what we do, yes, is data driven, even to scoring our projects for what are regional priorities. That being said, data is not the only factor. We also take into account, you know, the people that serve on our boards and our advisory committees that know these projects and kind of can speak to how well this project will actually benefit the region other than the data. But that being said, you know, data is a snapshot in time. That's it. And we can plan everything to go with this data and these models. But if you throw one wrench into that, the data could go totally somewhere else that you didn't project for your next 25-year plan, and you could be going the wrong direction, which is why we update plans every 5 years. We check regional priorities in our region. You know, we do transportation costs for projects every 2 years, just to ensure that people's priorities aren't changing as new stuff is happening.
Got it. Llewellyn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm very interested. I was wondering, this inflow of population, is it beginning to change your politics?
So it hasn't changed our politics a lot. We have seen a little bit of a shift in the more urban areas. But for the most part, that's about the only area that we've seen any political type of shift. And it's been very minor. I'm
not familiar with your part of Texas, so forgive me. Do you have a tourist industry there?
So we don't have a tourist industry here, but we have our towns and communities all have tourism focused organizations that
So tourism is part of your economic mix,
yes.
which always requires transportation and a certain hospitality base in hotels, movability, safety, etc. One of the things I'd like to throw out as an idea, it's not really a question, that the whole transportation world will be shaken up and revised if we get autonomous vehicles, because they will not be on the road as much, one assumes, as they'll be on demand. There'll be more roadway because presumably they will park in central areas where they can recharge. This is not clear. Despite the idea that you would have your own, it makes no sense to have your own autonomous vehicle. So it's high chance that you'll summon one when you want it. And if you do that, you'll have a vast reduction in the population of cars and less need for expanded highways. What do you think of that?
Well, I think in theory it sounds great, but people are greedy, and people like what they like. And I like the idea that, hey, I walk outside, it's almost like ordering an Uber, but it's autonomous.
I like Ubers very much. It's made when I'm moving around in business, I find it's like having your own limousine.
But I think
there was a time when I would use a limousine just by the day. If I had a lot of appointments, I don't have to do it. Much cheaper to use an Uber. And that's very interesting. While we're talking about that, let me ask you an out of the usual question. What do you see that may lend itself to Uberization? We've seen it with B&Bs that have become a sort of global Uber type business with Airbnb. Do you, looking around, see other ways where you could get this kind of individual ownership but central direction or central banking, whatever you call it? I find Uber more interesting, not because it has a car when I want one, which it seems to, but because the Uber company has laid off the cost of a huge infrastructure cost on the individual. They don't have to buy the cars. In the old taxi pattern, somebody had to own the car. Often in New York, a taxi company could own 500 cars. That's a big capital expenditure. Uber has got rid of the capitalization of the tools that earn its money. I'm of the thought this is going to happen with solar roofing, that it's going to be essentially the Uberization of part of the electric supply. And I was wondering, because you're obviously a very interesting, thoughtful person, if you've seen anything else you think which would be helpfully Uberized.
I haven't thought about that, but that's a good point. You take the capital away, and it's just like working remote. You're paying your rent or your mortgage for your office space so that you can do your work.
Well, if you get a large company, that can make a huge difference. The downside we know, and the downside is you don't have the control of people. You don't know the personalities, therefore promotions, for example, get to be very hard. Of course, some people will slough off and some people work very hard, none of which they can be really counted in the same way they can if they're down the corridor sitting in a workspace. But interesting. But we are seeing these tremendous changes in society, and they're going to continue, and AI is going to accelerate them, I think.
I think so.
I'm sorry, I'm supposed to ask a question, not give an answer.
Johnny, final thoughts.
Yeah, I just think it's very, very good. I think it's an issue that has been with us a long time, since the 1800s, how we move around. But as Llewellyn said, with the AI, it's going to really, really change things, and everything from vehicles that can pick you up to the urbanization of things. And I think it might go to the urbanization of where people live. I mean, you might just rent for a while and move on and have no permanent kind of residence. So I think things would change. But at the end of the day, we must move just as we must drink water and we must eat. And I think it's one of those problems that's been with us. We had great stagecoach lines between Stagecoach Inn and Austin in the old days. And I think right now with new technologies, that's where we are. How do we move people in an efficient way and in a safe way?
Absolutely, absolutely. And perhaps the other thing that could be interesting is, we have talked about it with internet and solar power and all these things that the rural community will evolve and transform because people want a prettier side, quieter side. They want to live by the ravine. They want to live by whatever the path, the farm, the what have you. And so I think that eventually there will be a bit of a renaissance of people migrating into rural Texas in bigger numbers than most people think, just because of they want a better quality of life.
Yes.
Yeah. Ryan, anything that is in front of you, what are you doing the next 6 months? What activities or conferences or big meetings, what's happening for you in 6 months?
I've got some state level meetings for the MPO transportation. I've got a couple federal level meetings with transportation, talk about some funding priorities and how we move forward with the new administration coming in, and how we address what our needs are and how to bring us up to where we actually need to where we should be in order to move forward and be productive and proactive as we move forward.
Right.
Nelson,
So
you should have mentioned the Texas A&M football game. Again, I'm a little disturbed that you didn't mention that was coming up. Nobody's mentioning for the first time in 13 years. The Aggies and the Longhorns, the rural and the urban will meet. The Ubers and the horses will meet.
well, I can tell you this much, Johnny. I know that the Longhorns are favored, but the Aggies are hungry. They lost their last game. They should have not lost that game. So watch out.
I understand. That's good stuff. I understand. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Ryan, thank you for being with us and helping us understand better how the central of the triangle evolves. We are hopeful that the answer is all of the above. We need more bond lanes. We need more smarter planes. Perhaps we need vertical takeoff and landing vehicles and big drones. And we need rail and trains connecting Austin, San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas. And you are sitting smack in the middle. And I've actually been to that Alcoa plant several times. And it's all that region is beautiful. It's very green and growing like crazy. So you're going to be a busy guy.
Right. I sure will.
Llewellyn, any final thoughts?
Well, I'd like to apologize to viewers. I haven't had time to castigate Johnny sufficiently this time around. I found Uryan so interesting, I let Johnny off the hook.
Well, I'll say the same thing. I'll let you off the hook this time because you're such a great colleague. So I'm going to let you off the hook this time.
Indubitably.
Well, you all have a great Thanksgiving, and I hope that everybody has time to refresh and relax and recharge your batteries. And with that said, Johnny, if your guitar is nearby, let's take us away.
Thank you.
I was a highwayman.
Thank you, Ryan.
On the crossroads I did ride, sword and pistol by my side. Many a young maiden lost their baubles to my trade. Many a soldier lost his lifeblood on my blade. The bastards hung me in the spring of 25, but I'm still alive. And I'll be around again, again, and again, and again, again, and again, and again.
Woo! Thank
All
you,
right.
Johnny.
Thanks, y'all.
Appreciate you very much. Ryan, thank you. All the best.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks,
See ya.
y'all.
Take care. Let me know where you got
Bye.
that name from. Send me a letter.
All right.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.